Hello, Annalisa. We're going to take a look at your aesthetics and control posting here. So we will jump right in with a screen share here. All right. So looking at the overview, looks like we've got to hold and not to hold here. Everything looks good there. You're shooting in color. You could have done either one. That's fine. How deep? You started out with 4.5. We'll talk about that in just a moment here and what that means. You're using certain apertures that we didn't necessarily need to use. The equivalent exposures here as we move into there. We'll talk more about what that is, but it looks like you've got that pretty well done. The exposures look good. In other words, the lightness and the darkness of the images. Did you get them, in the proper range? Do they look too dark, too light? No, they look pretty well, well seen. Some of them get a little bit bright, like on the one that I'm circling here. Or a little dark like the one I'm circling here, that kind of thing, or really dark like the one I'm circling here. But overall, I think they did a pretty good job of doing that. I'm glad that that you're sort of changing your perspective on photography. This course is designed to do that. I mean, it's designed to help students understand that there's a lot more to photography than the camera. You've heard me talk about this in class quite a bit, and that is that the photography is not about the camera. It's about light, and it's about your vision, how you see light coming together and how you arrange the light that bounces off of objects. So I'm glad that you're looking at that and how you want your photos to have a message and how they convey something. Your ability to control the camera and your ability to manipulate the light, or at least control the light, that's going to be the way in which you can convey messages. So let's jump up into the body of your work here. This first image, this is really nice. The lighting on this, you've done a beautiful job of organizing the light here. The way in which you've got the key light happening over here, you've also got, or the fill light that's happening here, and then the key light that's creating that those directional shadows. This has really got this beautiful glow to it, particularly where you have this little highlight right on the side here, this little moment right here. It's all lovely. We get a little bit awkward here where it goes right into the corner. That's a compositional sort of thing that we want to avoid most of the time, but just overall, this works really well. 125th of a second is what we're talking about here. That's a fast shutter speed. Most everybody should be able to make a photograph that is crystal sharp at that. When we get into a 15th of a second, that's when the question starts to come up. Can we hold the camera steady at a 15th of a second? Now, some students were using the table to kind of steady their camera, and that's fine. I didn't say that you had to or didn't have to hold the camera, try to hold the camera steady. This really wasn't about, challenging you to hold the camera steady necessarily at certain shutter speeds. This is really more about exploring what happens when you do different shutter speeds. Here you're using a shallow depth of field at a 15th of a second. Some people can shoot at a 15th of a second. They don't drink caffeine or whatever, and they're very steady-handed, and they can do it. You may be one of those people because this is an excellent image, and for a 15th of a second, it's pretty darn sharp. Not as sharp as your 125th, but it is pretty good in terms of the sharpness of it. A 15th of a second is usually that middle ground where some people can and some people can't. You're going to find that there might be even some scenarios where you can do it and others that you can't. So this is really all about getting to know you and getting to know the camera at the same time. Now, the half a second, no one's going to hold the camera steady at a half a second. And so those that are showing me images like this, I can definitely tell you've stabilize the camera in some way. You're putting the camera on something, because nobody holds the camera steady like this at a half a second. If you're holding the camera like this at a half a second like this, you're my hero, because I've never seen anybody do that. So clearly you're attempting to keep the camera steady. Either way, regardless of how you're doing it, you're attempting to keep the camera steady. That's not necessarily what we're trying to do here. What I was hoping, and what most people did, if you look through some of the other students' examples of what they were doing, you did because you were looking through other students. They took the phenomenon of the movement and they played with it. They attempted to incorporate it into the aesthetic of the image. I'd like you to play with that. Not to redo this, but just to have that experience. I want you to go into the studio. When we get back into the studio after this experiment, just take a few minutes or take a half an hour or something like that, and set your camera at a half a second and kind of explore that idea. I don't want that lost on you. I want you to be able to see how that works, because it's a whole like world of exploration that you could use to capture energy and to capture a certain feel that you can't get any other way. Photography can capture a long period of time, and our eyes can't see that, but the camera can. And so it's something that I want you to explore. You attempted to keep the camera steady at a half a second, which is remarkable, but that really wasn't the objective of what we were doing. And maybe because I think there was only maybe one or two others that did it this way too. And I tend not to try to, write every single exception into the handouts, but I'm going to take a note of that. So the next time I do the class that I mention it, or I talk about how I would really want you to do movement rather than attempting to, keep the camera steady. I'm not saying you did anything wrong. I didn't clarify that, but I really do want you to explore the idea of movement, within the shot. Okay, so next, let's move down into your, here we are. Oh, I've skipped over your other, I'm sliding too fast. Here we are, how deep. Now, how deep, this is gonna be, the same image over and over again. And so what you have here, and you did a thorough job, right? I mean, you have lots and lots of apertures here. You started at 4.5, went to 5, 5, 6, then you went to 6.3, 7.1, 8. These here, 6.3, 7.1, 4.5, 5.0, those aren't f-stops. Those are in between things. 5.6, if you look at that sort of chart that I was offering you guys, 5.6 is the first full f-stop that you have on here. That's where I wanted you to start. You've got everything. So to correct this, you just have to delete some things here. So you would just have 5.6, 8, 11, 16, and 22. Those are full jumps. Okay. These in between ones, it's good that you have them. Why are they there? They're just in between steps if you have to modify the exposure just a little bit when you're in manual mode. So you don't have to jump a whole step. But in this experiment, it's important that you understand that those jumps are from the whole f-stops that we're working on. So I'm glad that you have all of those steps, and I appreciate that you included all of those there. However, I don't want you to include those because they are not part of the experiment that we're trying to put together. We just want you to use the whole f-stops, because that way we can visualize the difference in the apertures much more clearly. Otherwise, we're just moving like a third of a step at a time, and we're not going to really see this shift as well. Not to mention, I just want you to memorize the whole f-stops so that they're in your head rather than having to memorize all of these numbers. And just understand that from 5, 6, you're 2 clicks away from the next whole f-stop, which is 8. You don't necessarily even have to memorize these 2 numbers, 6.3 and 7.1. So that said, you have them there, you have the information. It's just a matter of deleting the unnecessary ones. That's cool. So don't worry about it. I just wanted to point that out. We need to make sure that that you understood that we just wanted the whole f-stops. So That's fine. I'm glad you have such a range, though. That's good. You can also see that when you change the focal length, sometimes the actual f-stop choices change. That has to do with the relationship between the lens and the size of the hole. Without getting into too much detail there, it's a relationship. And so when you change the focal length of the lens, the size of the hole and the focal length of the lens, that relationship changes. And so the number that we identify as the f-stop changes. Just bear with, I'd have to go into a whole lot of math to explain it thoroughly to you. But when you change the focal length of your lens, the numbers that you have available in terms of f-stops will change as well. And just know that. And you've witnessed it. You see that instead of 5.6 or whatever, now you only have f8 as the one to be able to use. Again, here with your equivalent exposures, let's see. Yeah, here we are. Equivalent exposures. This is a math problem. That's all that is. What I had you guys doing was to have you start off with a particular exposure solution and then move one direction with one control, move the other direction with the other control, and to get you to do that and to do the little calculation and do the little sort of shift and then take the picture. You either did it or you didn't do it. You either got the solution and then took the picture, or you didn't get the solution and take the picture. So it's really just, did you get 2 + 2 = 4 or not? It's important that you're able to do this so that you have full control and total, I guess, say so. You can disagree with your camera now, because if you're out like this week, you're going to be out on location. You might have a moment where you're thinking, I've got to make this a little bit brighter than the camera is saying it needs to be, because the camera is going to try to average things for you when you have it on programming. So you may need to go to manual and make an adjustment, and you might need to shift it a little bit one direction or another, and you have to go to manual and do that. That's when you might use those in between ones. Not necessarily that you have to memorize the numbers, but you would go click, just one click rather than 2 or 3 clicks. That's why those numbers are there. So understanding manual control helps you to understand, if I click this way in this direction and I click this way in that other direction, it's going to keep it the same. But if I click this way in this one direction and don't click in this one, I'm going to either make the image brighter or darker a little bit. If I give more intensity to the light by opening up the aperture a little bit and keep the shutter speed the same, I'm going to be giving more intensity. Therefore, I'm going to brighten the image just a little bit. That's what the equivalent exposure is meant to kind of illustrate and help you understand that shift this way, it's the same. If you didn't get it right and you took a picture, you'd see the image would either be too bright or too dark. And some people had that happen. I don't know if it happened to you and you had to do it over again, but it looks like you got all of those correct. So good. So now we're into the you know better, and the you know better is really the point at which I was asking for you guys to just sort of explore. Now that you have some experience with lighting, you have experience with the camera controls now, and you've been using these materials for 8 weeks. What kind of things could you do with it, with just sort of a blank slate, whatever you want to do with them, and sort of play with different compositions, different lighting settings, different depth of field and that kind of thing. A few of these got away from you. I mean, I think this is a really interesting concept. As far as the image, as far as getting in there really close, the lighting looks like it almost was really good. This kind of image, I think we could correct this in Photoshop and it'll be just fine. We're not doing Photoshop for the class, but this is the kind of image we could definitely save in Photoshop. We don't tend to try to make images deliberately that we have to save, but this is the kind of image that if it got away from us just a little bit, they don't have to get away from us. We could see this image in our camera and know it's got to be a little bit lighter. Manual control, brighten it up a little bit to make it perfect. But anyway, you have this image, you could easily do it. I really appreciate what's going on here with the lighting and everything. Clearly, you know about lighting, because that first image that you put together was just outstanding as far as the way you control the lighting. A few of these got away from you. I think you know that. I mean, I think you know that this is just dark. There's no getting around that. I don't know if you just put it in there because you didn't have enough imagery or something like that, but that, you put it in there. So I'm looking at it and I'm just going to say it's too dark. Same thing with this one. It's too dark. If I didn't say it's too dark, you might think, oh, maybe it's not too dark. So I'm not trying to beat you up. I'm just saying, I'm saying, yes, it's too dark. You probably know it's too dark. So a few of those are too dark. A couple of them get a little bright too. This one gets a little bright. So you want to kind of hold on to those. There's only so much you can do in pushing one way or another. I like that you're going to the thresholds. That's important. Push the limits. Now we know where some of the limits are, and we want to kind of pay attention to that. Compositionally, I think you're using the whole picture plane. That's good. We talked a lot about that. We want to continue using the principles of design and composition. We're going to be outside now for the next week. You're going to be thinking about and exposed to a lot of different things, literally exposed to things, the weather and whatnot. The lighting's going to move constantly. The sun, it moves. So you're going to have to deal with those things, but we want you to take time to be able to make imagery that is still compositionally sound, that has the kind of lighting that is carefully thought out. So you have these 4 scenarios that you want to create at different times a day. Take some time, schedule out enough time for you to go back and do it several different days so that you can repeat it, so that you can shoot without fear if this is my only chance to do it, and then repeat it if you needed to. Learn about in the first shoot, what did you do well, what didn't you do well, and then head back out there and try it again. Just like a painter, you make a brushstroke, it's not going to be the only brushstroke you ever make. You're going to make a brushstroke and then you're going to evaluate, I'm going to continue here, and you may end up brushing over that first brushstroke. That's fine. Photography, we can't just take a picture and then take a picture over the picture. We'd take another picture. So that's what we would do. So give yourself the amount of time to do that. We're going to end up coming back into the studio and showing you how to duplicate what you learned from the location stuff. So anyway, that's what we have. I hope you enjoy the location shoot next week. As I had said in class, you can jump on Zoom on Monday or Wednesday when we're during the regular hours. I'll be available to take a look at what you have. All right, we'll see you. Bye-bye now.